I kind of feel a little bit hidden here. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to Houston Oasis. I'm Verena Kalov. I am going to be your MC today. I'm like looking right at the back. So we have a fun program for you all today. We're going to start off with some music from Duanne, Massey, and followed by a talk from Dan Potter with the Kinder Institute. For those of you who keep tabs on that, the Kinder Institute just published their newest survey a few months ago. Is this not? There we go. That's better. A few months ago, and so we'll hear from Dan. Lunch today is going to be outside at Mala Sichuan at Westheimer. So really looking forward to a good Sunday gathering today. One of the core values that I'd like to point out for us today is reality is known through reason. I think we're going to come across a lot of data today that will kind of inform how to think about our region here as well when we listen to Dan. Just one quick announcement. If you happen to have children in a school district here in Texas and are concerned about the 10 Commandments being displayed, please go and see Eric. At some point, he has some actionable activities for you all to get engaged in. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Duanne Massey. He's been performing for 60 or more years.
I'm old.
He plays the flugelhorn and trumpet. So really looking forward to hearing a number of big variety of music from you today, Duanne. Thank you.
I'll try and keep you from sleeping too much. On the sunny side of the street, grab your coat, get your hat, leave your worries on the doorstep. Just direct your feet to the sunny side of the street. Can't you hear that pitter-pat and that happy tune in your step? Just direct your seat to the sunny side of the street. I used to walk in the shade with my blues on parade, but I'm not afraid. This rover has crossed over. If I never had a cent, I'd be rich as Rockefeller. Gold dust at my feet on the sunny side of the street. Well, thank you. Okay, I'm going to do something a little slower and older even. But first, a drink of water. This is a song from the Casinos, if you are old enough to remember them. If not, it's still the Casinos. Kiss me each morning for 1,000,000 years. Hold me each evening by your side. Tell me you love me for 1,000,000 years. If it don't work out, if it don't work out, then you can tell me goodbye. Sweeten my coffee with a morning kiss. Coffin my dreams with your sigh. Tell me you love me for 1,000,000 years. If it don't work out, if it don't work out, then you can tell me goodbye. But if you must go, I won't grieve. Just wait a lifetime before you leave. But if you must go, I won't say no. Just wait a lifetime before you leave. Tell me you love me for 1,000,000 years. If it don't work out, if it don't work out, then you can tell me goodbye. But if you must go, I won't grieve. Just wait a lifetime before you leave. But if you must go, I won't say no. Just wait a lifetime before you leave. Tell me you love me for 1,000,000 years. If it don't work out, if it don't work out, then you can tell me goodbye. Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Duanne. Let's see here. Oops. Okay. Well, that worked a lot better than I thought it would. All righty. So who of you thinks that Houston's roads have gotten more crowded? And it is true, because we have gained, as a metropolitan area, according to this, 1.5 million people over the past 15 years. There's definitely been a lot of changes here in the Houston region, but people love living here, and some of it is because of the diversity, some of it is because of a lot of good things that are happening here in Houston. And so today we're going to take a little bit more of a deep dive into what's happening in Houston and how people are valuing living here. Dan Potter, Dr. Dan Potter is here with us today. He's the director of the Houston Population Research Center at the Kinder Institute for Urban Research at Rice University. And in this role, Dan leads the survey work, including overseeing the Greater Houston Community Panel, a longitudinal panel study of nearly 10,000 adult residents spread across Fort Bend, Harris, and Montgomery counties. It uses quarterly surveys to examine topics like health and well-being, civic engagement and participation, safety and experiences with crime, social connectedness, and financial stability. And I mean, in the role that I'm in, we actually pay very close attention to this survey, especially because of its longitudinal nature, right? There's really interesting things you can glean from it when you look across decades as to how attitudes are changing and how that correlates with some of the things that we're seeing on the national level as well. So you're not here to listen to me, you're here to listen to Dan. So Dan, if you want to come up and talk to us about the Destination Houston, a growing region's path to prosperity.
Excellent. Good morning, everybody. It is wonderful to be back to speak with you again. I very much appreciated my last opportunity. Oh, thank you so much. Oh, my goodness. Oh, perfect. Yeah, here we go. Okay. So shockingly enough, we're different people, and as different people, we require slightly different microphone things. Awesome. Thank you so much for your help there. It is great to be here again this morning to talk with you and to share with you some of the results from our most recent Kinder Houston area survey. These results we collected earlier this year, but we actually shared them out just last month. So these are some of the latest and greatest findings coming out of the Kinder Institute. Real fast, in case you are not familiar with the Kinder Institute, at the Kinder Institute, we are looking to improve lives through data, research, engagement, and action. And we do that with a vision of inclusive prosperity. Houston is one of the most prosperous regions in the entire country, but we also know that that prosperity is not shared. How do we have a future Houston that prosperity continues while also at the same time getting more people involved in that opportunity? Inclusive prosperity guides our work there. We have 5 different research centers that look to study and understand topics of population, education, housing and neighborhoods, community and public health, as well as economic mobility. But when we're doing our research, we are trying to understand and tackle systemic structural issues. You do not understand systemic and structural issues in silos. You must collide these different spaces. And so this is what that arrow at the bottom of this graphic reminds us, that our research is not intended to stand alone, but to be connected with other research going on in different sectors. We utilize a research practice partnership approach in a lot of our research, which means that it is not about us sitting at Rice thinking, what do I want to study? But rather it is us connecting with community organizations to have them drive the topics and the information that we are gathering, in part because we are tired of research being done to just sit in journals and sit on shelves. We want it used, we want it to have an impact, we want it to make lives better. You do that by working with the people that can use that information to do exactly that. In terms of today's agenda, I'm going to give a very quick overview of the Greater Houston Community Panel. That is the longitudinal study that we are using for our survey work. And then we're going to hop into highlights from the 44th Annual Kinder Houston Area Survey. In brief, we can give a little preview of where that journey is going to go. First and foremost, Houston's metro is growing unlike most other major metropolitan areas in the nation. Residents in Houston value its people, its economic opportunities, as well as the activities that are available here. despite people enjoying their lives, or maybe it's in spite of people enjoying their lives here, we continue to have our challenges. And so we're going to talk about what are some of those challenges, what do they look like across different parts of our region, and then also acknowledging that one of the big challenges we have is about economic inequality, the haves and the have-nots. And one of the things that came forward out of this year's survey was a very clear mandate. It is time to do something about that. That is a clear guidance we heard over and over again from respondents on our survey. And in that regard, recognizing Houston already is a good place for many of us. We are making it work here. How do we continue to build a city where we can make it continue to work for others? Again, that idea of inclusive prosperity. So real fast, our Greater Houston Community Panel. So the Greater Houston Community Panel includes over 11,000 residents living in Fort Bend, Harris, and Montgomery County. It follows adults over time. The important component to that is that by following the same individuals over time, it gives us that opportunity where if we're seeing something change, if people's experiences, financial conditions, attitudes, preferences are changing, it's not simply a reflection of a sample, it is about people changing in their own positions. And so that's this unique opportunity provided here. When we are doing our surveys, we are always offering them in English and Spanish. We attempt to include other languages, simplified Chinese, Vietnamese, French, Arabic as examples. We are not always able to do that with every single one of our surveys, but we are always offering our surveys in English and Spanish. And finally, we talk about respondents being, we valuing respondents taking the time, energy, and effort to respond. We put our money where our mouth is, and so we do incentivize our surveys. I bring that up because we have a pretty good response rate when it comes to hearing from these 11,000 individuals. In terms of what we have done with the Greater Houston Community Panel, it does offer an unprecedented and unparalleled view of the attitudes, experiences, preferences, conditions, and circumstances of Houston area residences. It is working with community partners. This includes community organizations, local government leaders, health organizations, to make sure the information that we are gathering is timely, relevant, and useful. And then the bottom bullet here just sort of goes into all of the different topics that we have explored. And I've shared with you all before some of those findings we've been able to gather through this survey previously. But for today, we are interested in talking about our Kinder Houston area survey. We conducted this survey earlier this year, January to February 2025. Of those 11,000 respondents, we heard from about 9,800 of them as part of this survey. During this administration, we asked questions about quality of life in Houston and what it means to be, why are people moving here? What does it mean to live in this area? We also got into topics around state legislative priorities as well as people's attitudes towards mass deportations. The state legislative research was released back in April, and our mass deportation study is coming out in the near future. With all of the research that we are doing, we are collecting information on people's socio-demographics. This allows for us to make sure that when we are talking about some of the overall trends in the Houston area, yes, we're giving that opportunity to look at the overall trends. We're also taking a moment to make sure we're understanding how there might be differences from one group to the next to the next. All right. So that is the Greater Houston Community Panel. Let us talk about the 44th Annual Kinder Houston Area Survey. And I will say, there's going to be a lot of data I'm throwing at you. Jot down those questions. We'll have some Q&A after this. So it's a little bit of a fire hose moment this morning. I'll tell you that in advance. But let's get some data out there, right? This is what we should be basing our reality on after all. So all right, when we're talking about the Houston area's growth, the Houston metropolitan area is growing faster than any other metropolitan area in the country, with the exception of Dallas. Dallas and us are neck and neck. But when you look at the other major metropolitan areas, think Chicago, think LA, think about New York. LA added about 5% over the last 15 years. New York added 5% over the last 15 years. LA actually lost 0.5%. Chicago lost even more, 200,000 people fewer in Chicago today than there were 15 years ago. Houston, 1.5 million more people in the Houston metropolitan area. When we look within the Houston metropolitan area to try to understand where is that growth taking place, this is perhaps not surprising. A lot of that growth is taking place in Fort Bend County, Montgomery County, even Harris County, When you look at the city of Houston in particular, that is our yellow gold line there at the bottom. There has been growth in the city of Houston since 2010, but what we'll note is that that growth was largely limited to 2010 to 2015. From 2015 until the present, there's been sort of a stabilizing, plateauing of the population. It goes up a little bit, goes down a little bit, but relatively stable. Now, some might view this type of a graphic as indicative of, oh my goodness, the city of Houston is stagnating. But an important other feature of the city to pull forward here is rather than talk about just people, we can talk about households. Now, if we all lived in if each of us had our own household, then people equals household. We know that is not the case. We live with family, we live with roommates, we live with partners and friends. So population does not equal household. When you look at households, not surprisingly, you see a very large growth in the number of and the percent of households in Montgomery County and Fort Bend County, Harris County as well. We can also note that the number of households in Houston has continued to go up and up and up year over year, with the exception of 2017, that was Hurricane Harvey. And we can also look at a little bit of a stabilizing that took place more recently. What does this mean? This is indicative of Houston not as a stagnant city, but an evolving city, where it is previously a place that families might have moved to. Now it may be young professionals, it may be childless couples, it may be empty nesters. These are who are making up our population more and more, and so our households continue to grow even as our population has remained relatively static. So what do people like about the Houston area? We can put that in three major buckets: the people, the economic opportunities, and the activities. Let's look inside those buckets. So when we're talking about the people, the number one reason given by Fort Bend County residents and Harris County residents of what they liked the most about living in the Houston area: diversity. Now, this might seem like a Rice University wanted to say the word diversity and make people excited. In fact, this is the word we heard from respondents. This was an open-ended question. We simply said, what do you like the most about living in Houston? Text box. Number one response: diversity. And so it speaks to an area, even as we sort of see the attacks underway around things like DEI, we are living in an area of diversity that appreciate, respects, and values one another for our differences. Other elements of the people, our local cultures, our communities, our neighborhoods. We enjoy where we live, who we live next to. And then we also recognize we've got family and friends in the area as well. All of these things make up the people that so many of us like about the Houston area. When it comes to the economic opportunities, Houston has jobs, and we got lots of them. Houston also has a relatively decent cost of living. Now, we all know it has gotten more expensive, but if we think about what do other major metropolitan areas look like around the country, we are still an incredibly affordable place to live. And while we don't want to take that for granted, again, there is still an appreciation for the economic opportunities and cost of living that is here in the Houston area. And then finally, when we're talking about the activities, we have our festivals, we have our football, we have our, sports more generally, we have our concert venues, we've got our theater district, we've got all of these different activities taking place around the area. And of course, I would be remiss to also to not mention the food, our restaurant scene. We have quite the culinary delights here in the Houston area. So the people, the economic opportunities, the activities. This is what people like about the Houston area. And so we wanted for people to sort of rate some elements of the Houston area. And not surprisingly, with what we just heard from residents about what they like most, when we were asking them about things like culture, large-scale events, parks and green space, job opportunities, over and over and over again, the majority of residents are reporting these things as being either good, very good, or excellent. Again, almost 9 in 10 residents rating the Houston culture as good, very good, or excellent. 70% of residents rating the employment opportunities as good, very good, or excellent. And this isn't just simply, oh, the Houston area, it is so daggone big, there is so much stuff that is here. Of course, people are rating these things as good, Because when we asked folks to reflect a little bit more on their local communities, one of the things that we heard from them was that they often felt like their local community was this microcosm of the greater Houston area. And so when we're talking about things like job opportunities, access to health care, when we're talking about things like parks and green space, as well as even local schools, the majority of residents, 3/4 of residents are saying that the jobs, the health care, the education that they have in their local communities are just as good, and in some cases even better than the rest of the Houston area. Now, I am sort of painting you all a glass half full type of an interpretation, because we can also recognize that there are about 1/4 of residents that are saying in their local communities it is worse than it is in the broader Houston area. And so want to make sure we're not losing sight of that. We're going to return to some of that later, but just wanted to call out, we can look at this from a glass half full. We also can recognize there's still more that we can do to improve. So that's what people enjoy about the Houston area. How did we get here? Well, for many of us, we were born here. I said we, that's not a, they were born here. I was not. I'm a transplant myself. But when we looking at this distribution of whether or not you were born here, moved here as a kid, or if you moved here as an adult, perhaps not surprisingly, when we are looking at Fort Bend County and Montgomery County, again, those counties we saw earlier growing more and more and more, they have a higher percent of individuals reporting that they moved here as adults, moving here for that opportunity. When we are looking in Harris County, we see that we have a little bit higher percent of individuals who were born here. But again, a lot of different ways that people are showing up in this area. We are not just transplants after all, but rather we have local, born here, raised here, and then have moved here. Despite folks having moved into the Houston area, there is oftentimes a lot of churn that is taking place within the Houston area. This is a very busy slide, so I apologize for that. The key takeaway that we are looking at here is this is broken down by Fort Bend, Harris, and Montgomery County. This top line of each of those different sections is asking residents, how long have you lived in the greater Houston area? So again, the general region that we are in. And what we see is a lot of folks have been here for quite some time. Even among Montgomery County residents, over half report being here 15 or more years. In Harris County, that number pops up over 70%, 15 or more years. Montgomery County, again, more than half reporting having been in the area for 15 or more years. The second line within each of these sections, Fort Bend, Harris, and Montgomery, is asking about their local community. Essentially, how long have you lived where you currently live? And here what we see is a very different story where the people, the largest proportion of people have been living where they currently live for that less than 15 years, with a decent chunk of people saying they've only lived there for the less than 5 years. And so again, we've oftentimes lived in this greater Houston area for a while, but we're moving around into different spaces and places while we are here. So what brings us here to the Houston area? Perhaps not surprisingly, jobs was the number one response that we got from people. But this is followed up with family related reasons as well. And this can be that there was a wife, a husband, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a partner that got a job here, and so I moved with them. This can also be parents following their adult children, wanting to be near grandbabies, where those grandbabies might be. So family reasons there. We also see people coming into the area for education reasons, and we've got some of the other stuff there. But again, we see the number one, job related, 2, family, 3, education related. Now, an important feature of this graph to call forward is that this distribution is true whether or not you were moving to the Houston area from somewhere else in this country, or if you were coming into the Houston area from outside of the country. So let's talk about immigrants. There's a lot of rhetoric out there, and a lot of that rhetoric is based off of boogeymen. People who don't know, they don't live next to, they are not part of a community that is an immigrant community. Houston is an immigrant community. 1/4 of Harris County residents were born outside the U.S. Nearly 1/3 of Fort Bend County residents were born outside of the U.S. 1/6 of Montgomery County residents were born outside the U.S. So when we are talking about the Houston area, we are talking about an immigrant community. And so we asked, okay, well, what is the value that we have? Do you think of immigrants, of these individuals? When you think of immigration, do you think of immigrants as being people that take more from the American economy or contribute more? 7 in 10, 71%, they contribute more to the American economy. We dug into this a little bit further. This is not just simply a reflection of immigrants more generally. We asked explicitly about undocumented immigrants. 61% of residents said that undocumented immigrants contribute more to the economy than they take. And just to be clear, this is the correct answer. I know sometimes we do some of these types of surveys and, hey, it's your opinion, you know, whatever. There's a right or wrong answer to this question. And the right answer is they contribute more. When you look at the contribution that undocumented immigrants are making to the economy, the Texas economy in particular, they contribute $420 million more each year than they take from the Texas economy. And so if you're thinking, well, what is the right answer to this question? That is the right answer. They contribute more, in fact. So wanting to make sure we don't completely untether ourselves from the reality of the situation as well. Not only do we value immigrants, we also recognize the contribution they make, and we disagree. We reject the idea that the Houston area would be better if you were to remove undocumented individuals. And in addition to that, we are not interested in boogeyman tales of, oh, undocumented immigrants are what's causing unemployment. False. And in fact, we reject that here in the Houston area. And this is not just a liberal Harris County perspective. This is a perspective that is held across counties. When we look at this by Fort Bend, Harris, and Montgomery County, we see over and over and over again a majority of folks saying that immigrants contribute more than they take. And even when looking at undocumented immigrants, while we do acknowledge those numbers drop, it is still 56% for Fort Bend County, 64% for Harris County, and 48%, nearly half of residents in Montgomery County. And anybody that knows the politics of these different counties, Harris is blue, Fort Bend is purple, Montgomery is one of the reddest reddest counties in the state. And so here is where we are at with our beliefs, again, reflecting our lived experiences, not rhetoric. All right. So this is what we like about the Houston area. This is where, you know, the people, the activities, the economic opportunities. This is the valuing of the people that are here and an appreciation. We also want to recognize we are not living in a utopia. We all realize this. And so we still have our challenges. So what are the challenges that are facing the Houston area? The biggest problem raised forward by Houston area residents, we broke down by county. Now, an important thing to take away here is the 5 things listed: crime and safety, economy, cost of housing, traffic, and infrastructure. While the ordering might be different from one county to the next, the top 5 biggest problems are shared across all 3 counties. And so while we might have our priorities a little bit different, they are the same priorities that we share: crime and safety, economy, cost of housing, traffic, infrastructure. Building off of this question of biggest problems, we also asked the residents to rate some of the other features in the Houston area. And given the list we just saw, it is not surprising what we hear when we were asking folks to rate things like the infrastructure, public transportation, public safety, as well as air and water quality. Again, a busy slide up here, but part of it is so the darker blue segments of the line are indicative of poor or fair ratings. The lighter blue is going to be your good, your very good, or excellent. The key takeaway here isn't really, hey, look at the differences across county. The important takeaway is there really aren't differences across counties. Yes, some of these bars are a little bit longer. Yes, some of these bars are a little bit shorter. But if somebody said, hey, what do residents think about infrastructure? They do not like it in Fort Bend, Harris, and Montgomery. If we're thinking about things like public safety, hey, how's public safety going? We have some concerns about public safety in Fort Bend, Harris, and Montgomery County. And so again, lots to take in through here, but the big takeaway message being that these challenges of our area, infrastructure, public transportation, public safety, air and water quality, they do not belong to one area, they do not belong to one city, they belong to us as a region, and so they become topics for us to tackle as a region. Looking more specifically at individuals, we wanted to understand how people were doing economically, and so we were asking folks about some of their financial circumstances. And in particular, one of our questions was say, hey, in general, when you think about the way you are doing financially, do you find yourself finding it difficult, or you're just getting by? Do you think of yourself as doing okay, or maybe you think of yourself as living comfortably? Again, the majority of our residents did say that they are either doing okay or living comfortably, but we can also note that we have a sizable percent of our residents raising their hand and saying that they are either finding it difficult or just getting by when it comes by their finances. And here there is a bit of a difference across our counties. A lot of this reflecting the resources we typically think about when we think of our different parts of our area, where we see our highest percent there in Harris County, 38%, so almost 4 in 10 residents saying that they're finding it difficult or just getting by. Another one of our questions that we asked regularly had to do with whether or not residents have $400 to cover an unexpected expense. And so, that $400 unexpected expense, this could be that flat tire, this can be a sick child, an injury, needing to get the AC working again on various different things. Lots of different things will cost $400 or more, and they come up as unexpected expenses. And so we ask folks, if that $400 unexpected expense popped up, would you just be able to pay for it with money that you have, or would you need to go get that money somewhere, or simply not be able to pay for it? When we were asking folks that question, 34% of Fort Bend County residents, 45% of Harris County residents, and 37% of Montgomery County residents said that they would have to go get that money. They don't have it available to them right now. And again, so that's people living in that space of sort of financial vulnerability. And this financial vulnerability plays out in economic inequality, which creates very different lived conditions in the Houston area. So again, we've got a lot going on this slide. The red arrows are sort of the thing to draw our attention to. So when we're looking here at this first set of bars, one of the questions we ask is, hey, do you like the life that you have here in Houston? And a lot of residents said, yes, they do. What this arrow is indicating for us, each of these bars represents people's earnings, earning a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. As your earnings go up, so too does your I like the life I have here in Houston sentiments. In the second set of bars, here we are asking folks to, we asked the question of rate your quality of life. And here we're looking at the percent of residents that rated their quality of life as poor or fair. As income is going up, that percent, it's going down. So again, the higher my earnings, the less likely I am to rate my quality of life as poor or fair. We see this playing out again and again and again over income, whereas my income is going up, either something good is going down or something bad is increasing. Very different lived experiences here in the Houston area. Okay, what do we want done about that? We've asked this question consistently for about the last 15 years. And so the top bar is reflecting responses to the question, the government should see to it that everyone who wants to work can find a job. The bottom bar, the government should take action to reduce economic inequality between the rich and poor in America. Back in 2010, when this question was asked, less than half of residents agreed with this statement. The government should take action to close the gap between the rich and the poor. Flash forward to our most recent administration, over 8 in 10 residents support the statement that the government should do more to close the gap. That orange bar up above, even higher support for the government taking action to make sure that if you want to work, you can find a job. And again, we see this going up and up and up over time. Once again, this is not just a reflection of liberal Harris County, but rather when you break this across different counties, again, the top set of bars, the government should take action to close the gap between the rich and the poor, 82% support in Fort Bend, 83% support in Harris County, 72% support in Montgomery County. The government should take action to ensure that if you want to work, you can find a job. Again, we see similar percentages across these counties. Now, a third question on this topic that we asked for the first time during this administration was, do you agree that the government should ensure a basic standard of living for all Americans? We were not sure what we would hear to this one. This is an amazing number. This is, again, not just a Harris County thing. You have 85% in Fort Bend County, 86% in Harris County, even 74%, 3/4 of Montgomery County residents agreeing, yes, the government should ensure a basic standard of living for all Americans. Now, of course, you might hear this and perhaps have this reaction, or maybe you don't, but there are others who you could imagine seeing this and go, oh yes, we all just want free money, right? Give me, give me, give me. Well, so we wanted to unpack these ideas a little bit more to try to understand what is this signaling? What are people wanting to see done? Houston does not want handouts, they want hand-ups. And this is reflected here because there is a complex relationship that we have with what seems to be holding people behind. On the one hand, there's a general consensus among residents that most unemployed people, they could find a job if they wanted one, if they really tried. There is also this continuing belief that if you are hardworking, you can get ahead here in the Houston area. But there isn't this false bootstrappy, just pull yourselves on up mentality either. Because we ask, well, so when we think about poor people, if poor people worked harder, they could escape poverty, right? And Houston residents said wrong. That's, again, there's a little bit of a 50-50 split here, but this sort of signals an area that understands that there is a complexity here, and that complexity is echoed in this last one, which is that people are poor due to circumstances beyond their control, agreed. That a lot of us aren't making bad choices, and that's the reason why we're financially strained or finding it difficult to get by. It's that we've got a system that's not working for us. And that in that regard, there is efforts that we can do, there's things that can be done, but at the end of the day, it is not just about what can me personally do. People are looking at the system and going, we've got to make a better system. And that within that better system, and so that's the policy piece. That's the government taking action to address this. And with the government taking action, individual responsibility can be what drives people's success. We shouldn't be determined by our zip code, but rather by our merits. And so this is individuals, this is people recognizing that this isn't just about like, oh, if you just worked harder, you could get ahead. And it's also not just give me free money, I like free money. It is recognizing we've got to build a better system that allows people to succeed. So let's look to the future. So in the face of all of these challenges, we might think to ourselves, well, what do we actually think about living in the Houston area? What is our quality of life? And what we see is, in general, the majority of us are rating our quality of life as good, very good, or excellent. Over 70% in all three counties, over 80% in Montgomery and Fort Bend County. And so again, there is this appreciation that Houston is working for many of us. How can we make it work for all of us becomes the question. And while that might seem idealistic, one of the things I want to leave you with is we still have this opportunity to get it right. That we talked about this earlier, right? Houston is still affordable. And here's the data to support that statement. Is when you look across the 10 major metropolitan areas in the country, these are the 10 largest, Houston, over and over and over again, is the cheapest, most affordable one to have a life in. And the reason I call that out is we're not talking about, oh, how do we get our median income up to $150,000 so we can all afford a studio apartment in San Francisco. Lovely city, lovely people, so expensive. There is an opportunity for us to solve this here, because for a single person to have a life here in Houston, you're talking about making $46,000. For a single parent, you're talking about needing $77,000, $78,000. Even for a two-parent, two-child household, you're looking at $104,000. Now, these are large numbers. I don't want to misunderstand this. Minimum wage is not going to get us there. Let's also be very clear about that. But there is an opportunity for us to do things here to allow for people to live a life that doesn't require them to live paycheck to paycheck, that doesn't require them to be unsure about where they're going to get that $400. And so policy and effort can be combined to ensure that all people, more people, are getting ahead. All right, lots of data, lots of numbers. Let's bring it around. So Houston area is growing really fast, and that is different. It is growing faster than most other major metropolitan areas, and that is different than some of the largest major metropolitan areas in the country. When we're thinking about the residents, we love the people, the economic opportunities, and the activities. We see immigrants as assets and resources and contributors to what is making Houston great. We do understand we have our challenges. We can call for things like public transportation, infrastructure, and public safety, and recognize that those are very local issues that we need to be addressing. And there is also the issue of economic inequality, which we are experiencing locally, but also has its sort of root causes even beyond this area. And residents, while we understand the complexity that is there, they want to see more done to be able to address and ultimately eliminate that economic inequality. All of the research done at the Kinder Institute is available for free. This QR code will take you to our website. These are just some examples of the research reports that we've released here over the last year, I believe. And again, kinder.rice.edu/research, and that is that. Okay, so, awesome. So here's the deal. We got to clear out of here today at a reasonable time, 11:40, I believe.
No, so rather than doing a coffee break today, last time Q&A went really long, and we don't have lunch here afterwards, so we don't have the room for a really long time. So what we thought we were going to do is, if you need to go grab some more coffee or a snack or go to the restroom, feel free to do that. But let's go ahead and start the Q&A so we can get all of our questions into Dan, and at the same time, refresh if we want to.
Yes. Okay, we got one in the back.
Hi, thank you. I haven't heard a lot about bartering, and I think bartering is a bit of an ingenious way of sharing, and you may have strengths, or, for example, I have a Costco card, I buy paper products, and we get them penny on the dollar, and I don't charge anybody extra, I just go buy those. But to barter with somebody else who has a better way of doing something or purchasing, especially groceries now, everything's going up. So I'd like to hear more about bartering if anybody has any good ideas.
Awesome, thank you for that. We don't have any data on that, but again, being creative about how are we going to get more people involved in success, we've got to have ideas open and available there.
Thank you. I'm not sure, I don't think you answered this at the very beginning, but when you added Fort Bend and Montgomery counties, you just did it, right? I mean, this is the first report that's come out since you added those. So I'd sort of like to get an idea of your general thoughts about that. Must be a huge change in your results.
Yeah,
And so how does that, how does it look?
for sure. So we recruited Fort Bend County in last fall. We did a community health assessment for them, and that report is going to be released here either late July or early August. And then Montgomery County actually got recruited as part of this survey that we did. And I think one of the things that was interesting is that while we absolutely see some differences across counties, we also, and again, part of what was highlighted here today was that when we are talking about some of those challenges, they are shared. And we wanted to start from that place of shared challenges, again, knowing there are enough differences that exist already between people. How can we serve as a shared voice? Because when we're going and thinking about, why study the Houston area in this type of granularity? We're but a city within an enormous state, and I think one of the things for us to reflect on is 1 in 5 Texans lives in these 3 counties. And that number feels false to the point where I have calculated it so many times. But that is true. 1 in 5 Texans are in these 3 counties. And so when you have these 3 counties unified around challenges, infrastructure, and when you have these counties rallying around things like public safety, public transportation, you could start to make some noise in Austin to really start to move things this way. And so we wanted to start with things that we were anticipating may have some shared issues. We will ultimately get at some of the questions that we anticipate, social issues, political issues that we anticipate will look differently across these counties. But for right now, this one is focused mainly on stuff that we were overlapping in.
Is it the same as the GMSA?
The GM.
Statistical area, which I learned about that.
Oh, so the MSA is going to include more counties than just those 3. So it's going to have Brazoria, Chambers, Waller, and I'm blanking on a handful. Oh, Galveston County is mixed in there as well. And so there is an opportunity in the future for us to think about how do we get even more voices included in this. These are the 3 largest counties in the metropolitan statistical area. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I went over here.
Hi, so I know y'all have been doing this in Houston for 40 plus years. Is there any sort of, do other major metropolitan areas have a Kinder Institute research? And if so, how do our numbers compare with theirs?
So in short, they don't. And in part, this has been one of the things that's been so beautiful about Houston is that when we are talking with community members and community organizations, there is this interest in hearing about what is going on here in Houston. And so then we'll go and we'll talk to people from Chicago, from New York, from Detroit, from Denver, from LA, and we'll share out. I was meeting with this community organization. I was talking with this community group the other day, and they look at me like I'm from a foreign planet because they're like, how are you doing that? And it's this very interesting reminder that the way that this community has embraced its understanding itself is unusual. That a lot of times when researchers are coming into the room, one, they're oftentimes there to lecture people and tell you how smart they are and all that fun stuff that's annoying to have to be participating in. And so there's a turnoff, right? And so I think that there's this important element to which the Houston area is curious about itself. And from my perspective, the opportunity to be able to do research that I get to turn around and hand back out into the community to help guide conversations, discussions, understanding what is going on, and ultimately, hopefully, drive impact is so amazing. And it's just such a critically important component to like the work that we're doing at the Kinder Institute, but also we don't do it without a community that's receptive to it. And so a lot of folks have been reaching out going, how are you doing this? And you sort of start to talk with them a little bit about, well, you have to recognize and appreciate diversity and expertise. You have to understand that you're going to go into a room where you are not the expert on someone's lived experience. They are. And if you can start with some of this humility, people will be more receptive to what you may have to say, but also you will find yourself learning in that process as well. And so we're like right now, we're about to launch a study to hopefully help shed some light on conditions going around, happening in Fort Bend, oh my goodness, El Paso, Fort Bend, Dallas, and McAllen. So try to give a little bit of a bigger view around the state about what's going on. But there really is this uniqueness to what Houston is doing that we are hoping that others will learn from and guide from. Atlanta's been working with us recently to try to do their own type of thing. But again, there's something unique that's happening here that is such a blessing to be a part of, quite frankly, and it's so amazing to have these opportunities. How do we get others to get engaged, I think, is an ongoing challenge we're facing, for sure.
First of all, thank you so much. This is so interesting. I'm curious if you have any ideas why, beyond, economic, people want to live here. Indigenous people did just fine here, but the world changed, and a lot of people, and your weather was low on your list. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but is it just purely financial opportunity, and they're going to put up with the other? Is that what you're seeing?
The economic opportunity is important. I also think that, and I'll just speak from personal experience here, there is something addicting about Houston. Having come out of the DC area, which is where I was previously, when I showed up in Houston, I was amazed at how willing and interested this area was to do something, to do better, to act. And again, I understand I sort of occupy a particular position that's not going to be everybody's experience per se, but there is something about living in an area that is always looking at what's next. I mean, a classic joke that I will make with folks is if somebody comes to Houston, I'm like, well, take me to Old Town Houston. I'm like, yeah, sure, come on, I'll show you the parking lot. And because we paved it over, we built on it, and maybe there's a nostalgia moment that you're like, shucks, we missed out on something, but that just is like, there's something in this system, in this place, where we are not going to get stuck on what was. We're going to be running towards what could be. And I think that just generates a je ne sais quoi, like a zeitgeist, like a culture, a spirit, an environment that becomes addicting to be a part of. And then you leave it for a second, go on a trip, you go to another space, you're doing a conference somewhere, you talk to people from other cities, and you just get reminded of how different things are running here in a way that is so interesting, and it is so hopeful about what we could be. I mean, what other city in the country has the diversity we have? Fort Bend is the most, a quarter. You don't find that in other places. Sure, you've got other places that might be, minority, majority areas, but they're not diversity. And we've got that here, and we don't just have it because we begrudgingly are living. It's like we're embracing these types of things. And so, again, like, those are the types of things that keep me loving this place and loving the life that exists here. And I think that while I'm talking from a very personal experience, I think it is something that we've tapped into with some of the data that we've captured, and it gets reflected.
Thank you. I sort of get you come and you end up staying. I came and only wanted to stay 2 years. 23 years later, my husband's talking about retiring and where we're going to live, and it's like, I'm not leaving Houston. I just haven't told him. My question is Harris County is huge, and I live what used to be the boonies. So do you split the data for Harris County for the affluent suburbs with the almost inner city, or is it all lumped together? So could you tell from my response where I'm from?
Yeah. So we collect address as part of the information we have, and by collecting address, it allows for us to geocode where people are at, and we've created 30 neighborhood areas that break up Harris County into sections. They are not a city-county divide, just to be clear. It's much more oriented around neighborhoods, bigger than just neighborhoods, but neighborhood-ish areas, in part for exactly what you're saying. Again, none of our data up here today was broken down at that sort of sub-county level, but one of the things we want to make sure that when we are talking about anything, whether it's some of the good things about quality of life and what we enjoy about Houston, that we are not losing sight of the challenges. Because if you look across neighborhoods, for me to tell you my zip code tells you too much information about me. When we are looking at the conditions of people that live in places like Greens Point, Setagast, East X Jensen, Kashmere Gardens, Houston Trinity Gardens, when you are looking at the Sharpstown and Gulfton area, when you're looking at Sunnyside and South Union, when you're looking at Gulf Crest, these are neighborhoods that are filled with individuals and filled with assets in that regard, and they oftentimes drop out of survey results because you can compare them against your River Oaks and your Upper Kirby's and your Cadies and your Kingwoods and your other different areas. And it's critically important we do not lose sight of these differences that space has to play in the lived experiences of individuals. Because again, like one of the best predictors of a child's future success is their zip code. There is a 15-year gap in life expectancy between neighborhoods that are less than 15 miles apart here in Houston.
That's one of the things when we came, that education was very important. We had two small children.
Yes,
And so we lived where we lived, not because it was our choice, but it was because of the school district.
for sure.
I mean, it didn't meet really any of my husband's and my needs, but it was giving our children the opportunity to be successful.
And you are not alone in that. I mean, we look at the commute data that we've looked at, and there are people that are commuting 35, 45, 60 minutes one way every day because they're opting for that school district, even though they've got that occupation that's maybe either downtown or more downtown adjacent.
So I think you said you sent out 11,000
Yes.
surveys, and you included Montgomery County and Fort Bend this time, which I guess was a bump up from the 10,000 maybe you've sent out before. So I'm curious about what what's the reason behind the number of surveys, and as we have more people, do you think there will be a reason to increase even further the number of surveys that you sent out, and like what would be your upper limit? I mean, granted, like you have only so many people to input in data and all that stuff and money and blah, blah, blah. But
Yes. No, well, and the answer to the last question is in part the answer to this question, is that you don't need 9,800 people to have a representative sample. And this is the beauty of statistics and sampling. You don't need that large of a sample to say something about the huge area that is Harris County, Fort Bend County, Montgomery County. When you want to dive down into those counties, recognizing that the lived experiences of individuals is differing within that subgeography, that is where our sample size becomes increasing in its number. And so that's been our priority, is rather than, I don't want to minimize the importance of county level estimates, but rather than stop at the county level, we want to be able to dig down into it. That requires additional individuals. Whenever we are thinking about adding additional respondents to the survey, what you talked about is exactly on the forefront of our thinking: time, energy, and effort to clean, curate, and analyze those data, write up the reports. There is the financial element to it. We talked about that incentive earlier. $15 a survey. So when we did this survey, when we hit go, that was almost $150,000 that we were shoving out there in gift cards for just this survey alone, and we're trying to do multiple surveys a year. And again, that's a price that we want to pay, because we are not going to sit here and tell you we value your time, energy, and effort. Please do this survey for free. we want to make sure that we're trying to offer some sort, and we understand that even that $15 is not really appropriate compensation at the end of the day. It's a token of our appreciation. And so those all become things that we are having to grapple with. There are certain emerging methods like small area estimations that we're exploring through different like advanced statistical processing to see if we need as large of a sample to be able to say something about some of these subgeographies. But again, the priority for us at the end of the day is we recognize that Harris County, Fort Bend, Montgomery are not monoliths. They are not a singular experience. And so, you know, if we want to comment on neighborhoods within the area, this is the investment we need to make.
Hello. I am interested in solutions, and you talked about hand-ups. There is a concern that I have, for example, with Lina Hidalgo, when she was trying to give like this little measly
Universal basic income?
yes, to some people, and they were fighting her on this. And I don't understand when you're talking about giving somebody a hand up, how is that possible in a place that doesn't let you do the bare minimum?
Yeah, there is definitely, you know, and I think one of the things that was remarkable about this finding is that it just further speaks to and is testimony of the disconnect between what the public is interested in and what representatives are providing it at this point. And it's infuriating that, just to not mince words around it, right? Like, there is a need for us to take care of our infrastructure. There is a need for us to invest in public safety, and that does not mean more policing. It means addressing root causes of poverty and inequality and disinvestment and other different types of features of our society that propagate activities that we then subsequently label as crimes. And so if we want to get serious about addressing the challenges that residents are over and over again raising their hand and going, this is a problem, this is a problem. In so many ways, nothing that I've told you here today is new per se. We've understood these challenges. I'd say some of the novel stuff is the increasingly we're losing patience with waiting for something to get done here. But I think it just speaks to this idea where we have to start holding accountable what it is that we are expecting of our representatives and our lawmakers. I mentioned earlier we did a study of state legislative priorities among the public. We sent all of that data to every single elected state representative that services the Fort Bend, Harris, and Montgomery County area. We gave them personalized reports that said, this is what your residents said they wanted. We will be following up on that to see, here's what residents wanted, how did people end up voting? Now, again, I don't know that that resolves the challenge, but part of this has to be like, if we're gonna have a system of representative democracy, we need to have it function for us. And if it's not functioning for us, it raises all sorts of concerns. Because we do have to be oriented around solutions. If we're only going to describe the disaster, if the problem is what we're going to end our analysis around, again, we largely understand the problems that are there. What we need to be doing is pushing forward solutions and acknowledging, like, if you're not going to be part of the solution, then we may need to get you out of the way. And there's a lot that goes into that, but yeah. I have had the exact same thought as myself. Like, if you genuinely didn't want responsibility, just put it on the ballot and let the people vote on it. Texas has some of the wildest ballot measure restrictions of any state. And so it creates challenges for being able to put forward even ideas like that. And so it's interesting because, like, Texas has a history where, in weird ways, it had a progressive streak to it. We had lady governors before that was really a thing. Like we had these different communities and these different colliding cultures for as long as there's really been a Texas, right? And yet when you sort of look at it now, it's stuck in this antiquated, like, make-believe land of a time that never really existed, but nonetheless, we're gonna hold on to that fairy tale as long as possible. And it doesn't help anybody. It's not actually addressing the challenges that we're dealing with right now. And so, I think that there are some large-scale reforms that are necessary, and it starts local, but it requires going beyond it. Again, if we just think about the way that Texas is set up with the Death Star legislation that was passed back in 2023, it limits what local communities are able to do for themselves as well. And so there's just a lot of competing factors, and I'm trying to not just be like, so what's the point? Because there is a point, there is a need to continue to move and to make progress and advancement. I think it's just trying to recognize that it is a challenge that's going to require large-scale action to address. There are some things we can do locally, and I think that those may be the things to try to get some early, easy wins on whatever momentum or movement that starts to get underway. But just recognizing that at some point there is this broader, large-scale transformation that's necessary.
Last question.
I think you've won.
Oh, okay. I'm going to go back to subgeographies.
Sure.
So many decades ago, Lee Brown created the super neighborhood system.
Correct.
It doesn't have the same goals, of course, but just how do you feel about the super neighborhood? Do you think he did a good job of putting something that can be it's broken up and can do some functioning in Houston?
We leverage those to design our geographies.
Good. That's
So not saying good or bad,
Yeah, yeah.
but just offering them up as it's a useful geography
Useful,
for
yeah.
us to be working off
Yeah,
of.
thank you.
Okay,
Thank you so much, Dan.
thank you.
I'll just stick with the handheld. The other one is way over my head. Yeah. One thing I do want to say about the weather, the average temperature in Houston is, I think, like 72 or 78 across the year. So maybe that makes us feel a little bit better. Of course, the summers are hot, but I do love the winters here. Dan, really insightful, greatly appreciated. Duanne, are you ready to play a little bit more music for us before we close out? One thing I did want to mention, free thought isn't free. So if you are able to contribute to what we're doing here, we do pay some of our speakers a little bit of a obulus, right? As well as pay for the music and the room. So please do, if you can contribute, please do so. Duanne?
Thank you for having me and listening to me. It's unusual to be playing in daylight. This is my take of an old jazz classic, My Funny Valentine. My funny Valentine, sweet comic Valentine, you make me smile in my heart. Your looks are laughable, unphotographable. Yet you are my favorite work of art. Is your figure less than Greek? Is your mouth a little weak? If you open it to speak, are you smart? Don't change your hair for me. Not if you care for me. Stay, little Valentine. Stay. Each day is Valentine's Day. Is your figure less than Greek? Is your mouth a little weak? If you open it to speak, are you smart? Don't change your hair for me. Not if you care for me. Stay, little Valentine. Stay. Each day is Valentine's Day. Thank you. I have one more short little tune for you. This is an original. And I don't really write a whole lot of country songs, but this just kind of turned out to be country-ish, as we like to say. Currently untitled, I still haven't figured out what to call it. So we'll figure it out sometime in the future. Don't turn when I'm talking to you. Hear what I say. It's the least you can do. While you were leaving me, will you still try if you are leaving me? I'll set you free and say goodbye. Talking is cheap when your words are a lie. Too tired to sleep, and I'm too old to cry. If love has gone away, won't ask why. If you don't want to stay, I'll say to say this is goodbye. Thank you very much.
Duanne Massey, thank you so much. Where can we find you if we are looking for you?
Depends upon what my parole officer has to say.
Oh, well, okay. Not quite in that context, but where can we find your music?
Sometimes I play with Pete over at Eddie V's.
Okay.
Sometimes I play out on the north side, out in Cypress, with a band called Hit and Run. And sometimes I stand on the street corner and hope someone listens to me.
All right, very good. Do you have a website or something?
I'll be at the Circle K, but they don't want me to talk about it.
Very good. Well, thank you so much. Excellent.
Thank you.
So, as I mentioned, lunch today is going to be at Mala Sichuan Bistro at 1201 Westheimer Road. Next week, we will be here, but it is the 4th of July weekend, so we'll make it a social gathering Sunday. If you want to bring some board games, feel free to do so. If you want to bring the best potluck dish you have, please do so as well. We'll be sharing food and just good conversation and board games if you so choose to as well. To continue the conversation with Oasians across the Houston region, next week, Sunday as well, out on the northwest corner, if you're living in the Humble area, Kingwood, Humble, Northeast Houston, there is a monthly social that happens on the northeast side the first Sunday of every month at, I want to say 1 p.m. at Pack Pew Brewing in Porter. So if you live out that way, that might be a good one. Or if you're listening to us online and you want to do some in-person stuff and live that way. Then there is a monthly midweek late lunch bunch that meets on Thursday, July 10th at 1 p.m. at Nico Nico's. I think Jennifer is the one that's hosting that. And the same day in the evening, Blues Night will generally host Blues Night occasionally at the Big Easy, starting at 8:15. Just a fun way to listen to the Mighty Org and catch up with some folks. Bar Night is going to be later this month as well, Saturday, July 19th. In general, there's a lot of things going on. We have all of our events generally posted to our website, as well as in an email that goes out, oftentimes I think on Sunday afternoon after the gathering. So please do come out and socialize and hang out. if you have ideas for a speaker, for a presenter of some sort, or you would like to join the speakers committee, please come and talk to me. Would absolutely love to have additional folks contributing ideas, as well as the manpower to get folks scheduled as well. Did you have a question for the group? Oh, excellent. Very good. Tracy G is out on the west side of town, I think, just off of Beltway 8. So that's pretty much it for us today. Thank you all for coming. It was great seeing you. And absolutely amazing speaker today as well. Remember, the chairs, no more than 5 to a stack. Thank you.